So, first, I would like to say thank you again for being on Life Her podcast. It means a whole lot to me. This is a podcast of what my mother was doing initially, and with her passing, it's like I took over something that I had no clue about.
Yeah, I am honored, especially hearing that story and seeing how her passion has now transferred to you and you're continuing on. She's passed
Yes.
the torch and you have the flame still go.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's a journey though,
Yes.
because with it being so fresh of
Hmm.
her being gone. So it's like just I'll be trying to like just take it easy on a daily
Yeah.
basis
Day
for that.
by day.
Oh yes.
Hmm.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about yourself, and let's just start about your younger self.
Okay. Well, my name is Corey. I'm from Canton, Ohio. I had the opportunity to live in two other states. I lived in Houston, Texas, as well as South Vallejo, California. And
Okay.
I'm now back in Canton, Ohio. My family is here. My family is from here. My father still lives in South Vallejo, California. So we had initially moved out there, my mother and I with him. And we have come back to Canton, Ohio. So that was the early years.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up?
Wow. Well, it's been very interesting growing up. It's kind of like a roller coaster ride, if you will. I ultimately lived in three states, as I indicated, went to 14 schools and lived in 8 different households. And that's inclusive of both parents, both grandmothers, cousins, as well as people that were not related to me. But what I ultimately determined that some of the issues that I faced growing up were attributable to my mother's, what we now know, severe mental illness. She was diagnosed with manic depression, schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia when I was around 13 or 14 years old. And it's been a very vicious cycle ever since she first started exhibiting signs of her severe mental illness. And as I have continued to learn about the illness, I've learned about advocacy and the importance of advocacy. And so I've committed my career and my time and my passion is to help families and friends that have a loved one living with severe mental illness. Because while it's frustrating at times, while it's a very complex situation, our loved ones do need us. And with the healthcare system as it is, they truly, truly need us and the community at large members to advocate on behalf of just the industry itself, with funding, with additional research, and just stressing the need for these community behavioral health organizations now that many of the mental health institutions are now closed.
Wow. So how difficult it was for you as your younger self dealing with a mother that had mental illness?
Well, I was not necessarily directly involved with it until I was 14 years old. There was an incident when I was much younger, but it's only looking back that we could say, yeah, she was more than likely exhibiting signs of mental illness at that time. But ultimately, to know it for myself, I was around 14 years old and I was directly involved in taking her to the hospital.
Okay.
Because I couldn't drive, I called my cousin to come over and help because my mother was just talking nonstop and it wasn't anything necessarily coherent.
Mhm.
Um, and she just talked as if I was not there, or if she did acknowledge that I was there, she was not, the conversation was not with me. And so I just knew that something wasn't right. So I called my cousin and we ended up taking her to the emergency room. And that is when I recall her first being diagnosed.
Wow. So with you knowing that your mother was diagnosed with mental illness, did you find yourself trying to go in the opposite direction, or did you even find any traits in yourself to a point where you wanted to transition your life in another direction?
Actually, it wasn't my mother's mental illness that forged that desire in me. It was
Okay.
actually just our circumstances, period, which a lot of youth in the American community face, which is poverty, living in a food desert, having a parent that works 2 and 3 jobs, being a latchkey child. I just knew I wanted more because I saw how my mother struggled. I saw her working at least 2 jobs, being stressed out to the max. I mean, probably a lot of what people are facing right now for the first time
Yeah.
with this COVID situation, which is I'm surely attributing to an increase in the need of mental health care services in our community. Stress alone, anxiety alone can be devastating, especially when you're not faced with these issues previously and have built up tools to help you cope and address with these types of issues. But with me growing up and seeing it firsthand, I knew I wanted more. I didn't know how to get more, but I knew I wanted more. And I knew I didn't want to have to, live to the extent of stress that I saw my mother have.
Right. That's something that I viewed also, growing up, looking at how my mom was so responsible for so
Mm-hmm.
many things. And what she taught me was turning my pain into power.
Mm-hmm.
So it gave me a form of controlling my mindset, not letting it take over me, like physically and mentally, and let my actions take over. And at that, I feel like that is really, really important, but it takes a lot of a lot of time to even
Yeah,
master that. And she done it since my birth until until she passed, but it's in me
right.
very long time. So what advice could you give a mother on how to prioritize her time on a daily basis, taking care of her children and still finding time for herself?
Wow, you know what? It just seems that we are distracted by the things that we have to take care of. And it would have to take a conscious effort on behalf of a person to want to balance it all and to manage it all. It's kind of just taking the approach. It's a learned strategy. You have to understand and know the complexities of your life and want to be able to address them, and knowing that there are resources available to help you address them, because many times we think we have to do it alone, or we feel we are and don't have the support, don't see the support, and don't some cases don't want to ask for the help when the support is there. But we have to let go of this superwoman syndrome that many of us experience and take upon the help that is available and not feel ashamed about it, not feel less of a woman because of it, and to just move forward.
Yes, because I find it, in an African American culture, that a lot of people think going to see someone to get mental help, they think it's like a negative conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like seeking therapy. Unfortunately, a lot of people feel that it is something that makes them look bad, like they can't handle things, or we fall upon these negative stereotypes in relation to people who have mental health issues. And if we really take the time to think about stigma and what's related to stigma,
Mm-hmm.
we would think about the images. What images are you thinking about when you think of a person that you want to say is crazy? What is that image? Because that's what's creating the stigma. You don't want to be associated with that image. You don't want to, if it's your relative, to be connected to that person because of that image. But that person needs your love. That person needs your support. And that person needs your help in connecting with the services that are available in the community, because alone he or she may not be able to do that, especially in the case of severe mental illness.
Yeah.
When we have that situation, an individual's whole reality is severely altered by delusions or hallucinations. And so with that mix, they don't know what is real or what is not. And then there's this term, oh my gosh, let me not try to say it again. But it's basically a lack of awareness with the individual. So if you are not aware that you're ill, why do you want to take the medication? Why do I need to take the medication?
Right. Right. Do you feel like Sometimes people take advantage of the medication, meaning, sometimes some, like, as though as a parent, some
Hmm.
parents will put their children on a form of medication feeling like they're acting out because of this way, but sometimes it could be how they are parenting and the issues that they need to face and deal
Well,
with.
yeah, unfortunately, there are abuses in most any industry in any space. And there have been allegations like that in regards to the school district, because they can get additional funding if the child has a disability. And that can be the case with households as well. If they're able to receive a social security check for the child because he or she has a disability that's severe enough to qualify for it. So
Right.
unfortunately, there could be abuses, but I prefer to focus on individuals who want and sincerely
Yeah.
going after the help that's necessary. If a child is diagnosed and it may be beneficial for him or her to have medication, then that the family work with the pediatrician, work with the mental health or behavioral health care provider to find out what may be best for that child. But it doesn't have to always be the first option. There are other options that may be available to help with the symptoms that the child is exhibiting.
Yes. What I've discovered over the years, because I work with young girls, I always advise my parents to get like a mental health exam. And
Hmm.
most people usually don't know anything about it. Do you know, like, could you be more informative about it so that people will know exactly what a mental health exam is and how
Sure.
you go about getting one?
Sure. There's an organization right now, Mental Health America, that is offering mental health assessments online. You can take the assessment right online and it'll follow up with different recommendations for the results that are concluded from what you enter into that information. When you go for your physical, even when you take your child for his or her physical, you can ask that doctor or the pediatrician to do a mental health assessment or inventory on your child. It doesn't mean that your child has a mental illness. It doesn't mean that you think your child has a mental illness. It's
Right.
just having a checkup, just like you're there for your physical, just like you go for your dental exams and have your teeth cleaned. You don't just do that because you think you have a cavity. You go to prevent having a cavity. And so, as we talked about the different stressors that many people in the African American community face, and that is limited to the African American community, but we are disproportionately experiencing it than the rest of the country.
Yes.
Our mental health assessments could help us to have preventive measures in place, before it comes to a point of maybe needing medication, if that's something that you don't necessarily want to do. And also, what's very important in the African American community, which I think attributes to a lot of people not seeking help, is that they feel it would make them less of a Christian if they don't solely rely on the church and prayer and just leaving it at the altar. That's a misconception, and we are doing harm to ourselves by not exploring other options. In my opinion, and as I've shared in churches, the Lord does not give us more than we can bear. And
Yeah.
I think that statement is saying that is why we have medical resources that are available to us. People who have been blessed to have the passion to learn about our biological and psychological makeup in order to create the different types of medication we need, the different types of services we may need to help us with our specific issues and or problems.
Wow. So on a daily basis, many people don't know, and I haven't mentioned it yet, that you are an attorney.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I feel like that is just so amazing that
Thank
you
you.
you beat the odds of everything as far as things that you've been through in your personal life, and for you to want more for yourself. Could you
Yes.
explain how important that is of breaking the cycle and you don't have to be the product of your environment?
Absolutely. I appreciate that question. Just absolutely that breaking breaking the cycle. And I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time. Again, I just wanted more and I knew that it was possible. But interestingly enough, as it relates to the mental health aspect of my life and my mother, I was scheduled to go to court when I was 16 years old
Wow.
because unfortunately in my mom's state of psychosis, she attacked me. And so we went into the court system. I was removed from the home, and there was a court order for no contact. So that's what led me to live in my 14, go to my 14th school and live in my 8th household, which was with my paternal grandmother, who was there to take me in so that I didn't have to go into foster care. But that morning that I was scheduled to go to court, I was so excited to go to court. I wanted to know how the court worked. I wanted to know who the person was in the black robe and the people in
Wow.
the suits. I wanted to know. So I was very excited to go that morning, only to get there and wait in the hallway and wait in the hallway and wait in the hallway for the caseworker to eventually come out and say, they said you can live with your grandmother. So we never got to go inside the courtroom. Never got
Oh,
to go
wow.
inside. But
Wow.
later in high school, I was assigned to the Canton Municipal Court to work for a summer job through the Job and Training Partnership Program.
Okay.
And that summer experience allowed me to work directly with a judge. I was assigned to a specific judge's chamber. So
Oh,
I
I
was able to
remember.
work directly with the judge and all the people in those suits who I now know were the attorneys. And I knew then I wanted to become a lawyer.
Wow. So what was your journey going going to college, and did you know automatically you wanted to become an attorney, or that was something that came later down the road?
Oh, it definitely came during that summer experience. And unfortunately, I also had an encounter with the police. I call that my third confirmation that I wanted to be a lawyer, because at that point, I wanted to know what my rights were. And I wanted to tell everybody else what their rights were, because it was, to me, a negative encounter that was unnecessary. And then I knew a lot of other people in my community were facing the same types of things, unnecessary, unfortunate encounters. But as I went on, yes, I purposely majored in English because I was told that any major that required you to write and read a lot would help you in law school. And so I became an English major. I then went into a master's program specifically because I wanted to know more about my mother's illness. And my master's is in education, guidance, and counseling, where we study for the DSM-4 book, which now the DSM-5 is out. But it is a book of the recognized disorders that a lot of psychologists read from and practice from now. Uh, and another thing that I did to learn more about my mother was looking at movies. There was a movie in 1994 that came out starring Diana Ross called Out of Darkness. And
Oh,
on that movie, you haven't?
no.
Oh, yeah. It's called Out of Darkness. And she was in the middle of her medical school career when she started exhibiting signs of severe mental illness. And seeing the TV commercials for the movie, I was immediately attracted, made sure I was in my dorm to watch it when it came on, because I wanted to know, how did the family respond to this? How was the family able, if at all, to help her through this process? And since that time, that is what I've been learning and reading about. How does the family help a person with severe mental illness? Because as my mother's only child, I was in that position when ultimately she asked to live with me when I was in college. I was a junior, and she came to live with me. And it was a very difficult situation, but it helped me to learn about the resources that were available in the community.
Wow. Like that's really amazing. How what advice could you give parents that suffer from seeing signs but yet they find themselves being in denial because they really don't want their child to be labeled as having a mental health issue?
Yes, that's another fight with the stigma, because we cannot afford to be ashamed of mental health issues and or concerns and or disorders. There is assistance that's available, and it is best to learn about those things ahead of time, to watch the signs and not ignore them, and get your child and or any other loved one the assistance he or she may need at that time, because
Mhm.
untreated the symptoms can become far worse and
Yeah.
far worse to correct and help that person to recover from those symptoms. So I suggest, never mind on, feeling ashamed about it. You love that person and you want them to live the best life that they can. And you can do your part by helping them to get the services that he or she needs.
Wow. I've always been curious, when you have a form of mental illness, does that combines into bipolar disorder in so many ways?
Well, there's like a distinction. First of all, just on a scale, if you will, as far as severity levels. So, an individual can deal with depression and anxiety. That can be considered any mental illness, AMI. But
Okay.
severe mental illness are more like the issues with bipolar and schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders where the person is experiencing the hallucinations and the delusions and just delusions, and just their reality is severely distorted because of those symptoms. So it's important to have those things treated, because in a psychotic state, untreated, a person can become dangerous. A person can become uncontrollable. And I believe that attributes to some of the images that we think of when we
Yes.
don't want to be associated with mental illness. So someone who is just experiencing depression, who is not, dealing with hallucinations and things of that nature, may not want to acknowledge this depression because they don't want to be
Yeah.
lumped into the category of someone who experiences severe mental illness. But
Yeah.
ultimately, as a loved one, you would want that person to live the best quality of life that he or she can. And there are resources available that can help them to do it. Some of the challenges, however, are that they have rights. And if the person doesn't want the assistance, they can't be forced to. It's under certain circumstances if they are harm to themselves or others. But even that standard seems to be at a heightened
Right.
scrutiny where
Yeah.
it's not easy just to do it. And unfortunately, it leaves a person that may be homeless on the street when they don't have to be. There was an experience not too long ago where my mother was found in a vacant house with no utilities. She
Oh,
doesn't have to live that way.
right.
I was very fortunate to have someone contact me to let me know, um, so that my family and I could work with the community resources to get
Mhm.
my mom into proper housing and to get her the assistance that she needs.
That's wow. I'm sorry that you still battle it, because sometimes that could just be tough,
Hmm.
because you want to see change so bad, but it's like all you can really do is help as you can and pray constantly.
And I know now the importance of self-care. We hear that phrase a lot.
Yeah.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry at this point. But
Yeah.
what does it really mean? Well, for me, it means understanding that you have to have boundaries.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are alarming numbers of caregivers dying before the person who has an illness, whether that's a mental illness or some other type of illness. If you're in the position of being a caregiver, you not only have the stressors of your daily life, but you're taking on the stressors of this other person that you're providing care for. So
Yeah.
it's essential that you create the boundaries necessary for yourself and that you get yourself help. You don't have to have a mental illness to care about your mental health. Going to counseling to help you to navigate through the additional obligations and duties that you're taking on,
Mhm.
in order for you to be there for your loved one, but most importantly, being there for yourself.
Yes, and when you mention boundaries, that comes with friendships, relationships, and everything. Is to a point, the change of growth when you becoming to love yourself more.
Mhm.
It creates you to have boundaries. It's not that you're acting funny or feeling some kind of way about them or dislike them. It's just you have reached a level of your life that you have boundaries on protecting your space.
Yes, your
Weird.
space, your energy. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's important that we hold fast to that. Again, preserving our quality of life that we want to
Yeah.
maintain, and our mental health and our physical health, because stress can, exhibit itself in different ways. And we may not understand that the headaches that we're having every day are related to stress or the lack of sleep or the lack of appetite. All of those things can impact our quality of life. So it is important to establish boundaries.
How do you feel about when individuals start the self healing of putting themselves together and people feel as though they're not giving them any attention as far as being they think you're being selfish, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, I say self first is not selfish. And everyone has to understand and respect that of another person. We can't put our shoulds on another person.
That's
A
true.
person is only obligated to do what he or she needs to do for his or her life, not necessarily for others. We may think it's morally right for them to do for others, or some other way putting this obligation on another person. But ultimately, we are here to do what we need to do for ourselves and then for others as we are able.
Yeah,
So it's important, to just have those conversations. I'm willing to help, but this is what I can do. Right. And if
yeah,
they need help beyond that, then perhaps they need to ask someone else who may be able to take on that role. But we shouldn't do things out of obligation. Many times when you do things out of obligation, your heart is not in it. You may have an attitude while you're doing it. And that may make the situation far worse than necessary.
yeah,
So it's important, if anything, just to encourage each other to talk about these things and understanding what our own responsibilities are for our own lives.
yes. And it's so important. I created a new space for myself where I find myself I meditate and different things of that nature, and I'm still getting it all together. But I just feel like that is just so important, and it gives us time out to ourselves. What are some of the things that you do to for you to gain yourself? Just peace.
Yeah, yeah. So I had the great opportunity to be on Sister Circle, and I was asked this question, and my immediate response was lay in the bed. That
Really?
is such a pleasure because I have been so busy that just the opportunity to just lay still in my bed had been so limited that any time that I can lay uninterrupted, just laying there is so rewarding to me.
Really?
Yeah, so even through this
You never
coronavirus,
falling asleep?
well, if I fall asleep, if I watch a couple of movies, whatever it is, it's
Uh-huh.
uninterrupted time that I don't have to be somewhere, that I don't have to answer the phone, that I don't have to do anything. Like nothing's on my calendar. And that is a blessing to me.
That's
So, while this pandemic is going on, and I know a lot of people are frustrated and stressed out to the max and have lost jobs and things of that nature. I'm using this time to be grateful. Grateful for the time that I have to just have peace and stillness in my life, because it has been quite hectic for a very long period of time. And so this is kind of giving me an opportunity to rejuvenate my mind, body, and soul.
oof, that's yeah. And that's where I'm at now. I'm still trying to maintain it because I just be busy all the time. But
Yeah.
for the most part, I just try to just find ways to woosah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, and if you want to put this in stages, if you will, because we talked about the boundaries,
Yeah.
just being still. I will also add to that having your mental and physical health as top priorities, and understanding, we just have to take life each day at a time.
Yeah.
Right. So, even dealing with a loved one that has severe mental illness, anything can change at any given moment. And so, what is important with having those boundaries, with having your physical and mental health as top priorities, is to know when to rely on the other resources that are available in a community. Some of those resources can include, there's an intense team, it's called the ACT team, and those individuals engage with your loved one on a more frequent basis than just having a caseworker. Also, having payee services, those are available in the community. So we talked earlier about a person having an SSI check, a social
Oh,
security check, a disability check.
yeah,
Sometimes in these situations, the person is not able to manage money on his or her own. So there are different payee services where the payee organization or a person can be designated to be a payee, would be responsible for paying that person's expenses, living expenses, and also giving that person allowance so he or she can, freely spend some of the money on things that they would like to buy. But
right,
those are some essential services that are available in addition to the medication services and having doctors and nurses who can give the medicine as prescribed when needed to your loved one. These are things that you don't have to take on. You don't have to be the one taking them to every appointment or making sure that they get to every appointment. And
wow,
in addition, the housing aspect is something that's very important for a person living with severe mental illness because their behaviors can lead them to having lease violations
yeah,
where they'll be subject to eviction. So it's important to know that under certain, under housing laws, there is the opportunity to ask for a reasonable accommodation um, so that they can continue to live in the unit. For example, if they got off of their medication or
mhm,
stopped seeing the having the services with the ACT team or any other kind of caseworker, they can ask for a reasonable accommodation to have the opportunity to get back connected with those services. Don't proceed with eviction. Give me a chance to get back together and then, live within the means of the lease agreement and not disturb the peaceful enjoyment of others.
wow. I never knew that it was so many resources like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine, some people don't even know that. So I really thank you for sharing that. Some
Yes.
people think it's just a stop right there from mental illness. You be diagnosed, you get prescribed something or any, just anything. But I don't think they know how far stretched it is for them to maintain and gain all of these resources for them to better themselves.
Yes, and it's very important that we continue to, and I appreciate you sharing your platform to provide this information to your audience and the community at large, because it is essential information for someone who has a loved one living with severe mental illness. And
Yeah.
even in the African American community, there are specified services. For example, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, it has a program called Sharing Hope where African Americans share their stories. Many times, if we can see and hear the real life story of someone else who has been there, done that, we understand that, hey, this could be me. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is an opportunity to keep moving on and pressing forward. But
Yeah.
many times our loved ones need us. They may not be able to ask, they may not be able to show their gratitude, but they need us in order to help them, guide them through these services and let them know that the services are available. So I recommend the National Alliance on Mental Illness to anyone who is experiencing any type of mental health concern, whether it's just, not being okay. It's okay not to be okay sometimes. It's
Yeah.
okay, right? And you can call a confidential number or you can text 741-741 NAMI. You can text NAMI to 741-741 and be connected with someone to talk confidentially 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That is so helpful for a lot of people.
Yes. And then again, like, who knew that? I think it's to a point where a lot of people has been out of, like, just in this placement where we don't want to talk about mental health, and we
Yeah,
see it as, we don't really take it serious as we should.
right.
I find a lot of people laughing at individuals with mental health issues instead of helping them in a process to try to seek and make them better. And we have social media now. A
Mm.
lot of people record individuals with mental health issues. Why not just, you know, call the police and have them come get that person so they could take them to a mental institute,
Right, right,
instead of
right.
using your cameras and just recording everything on them,
Yeah,
because it's serious. And
it is.
it could harm, they can either harm themselves or they can harm someone, and they really don't mean it. But we have some people that get defensive when a person that have a mental issue, they really want to fight them back.
Right, right, right.
So it makes it really difficult.
And another resource in the community is law enforcement. There are specially trained officers, the crisis intervention team, who can come out. They understand and know how to de escalate situations that may involve mental health concerns with an individual, and to understand and know to take them to the hospital rather than to take them to jail. So, unfortunately, a lot of people are subject to being incarcerated for their behaviors when they really should be in a mental health facility or behavioral health care facility to have the proper treatment that they need, because they're not going to get the proper treatment in jail, which can cause their symptoms to just intensify and only become worse and subject them to additional charges and a longer time period in jail. So it's important for us to do those things. And you mentioned the video recording. I mean, there's a young lady, this has been some time ago. Her name is Maya Campbell. She's an actress, and
Yes.
she was on a show, yeah, back in the early 90s called In the House with LL Cool J and
Yes.
Debbie Allen.
She actually got arrested today.
Today?
Yeah, I believe it was either today or yesterday. I guess they were doing like some, like, driving out of control or something of that
Oh, that's so
nature. Yeah,
unfortunate.
I just recently saw it today.
Yeah, so her mother was a New York Times bestselling author. Her name is BB Moore Campbell, and she has this book called 72-Hour Hold.
Okay.
And it's a fictional story, but it's going through the whole process of trying to help a loved one with severe mental illness. And I really believe it's probably based on Maya's life. She started showing signs of mental illness when she was on that show In the House.
Okay.
And now her mother is not here. So I don't know if she has someone that watches over her or helps her in her life, but just things like that, because people were recording her and posting it when she was in
Yeah.
a state of psychosis. And that was unfortunate because she probably thought they were her friends,
Yeah.
but they weren't recording as friends. And that was very unfortunate.
Yes, and I saw that he's another actor, was on the Disney Channel. That's So Raven,
Mm,
and I forgot his name, but I saw that he has a lot of mental illness issues also. And, you find a lot of people laughing,
hmm.
and I mean, I feel like if you're laughing at that person, that's a mental illness trait that you have for you to
Or
laugh
it's just
at
flat out
someone.
mean. And unfortunately,
Yes,
as human beings, we can be mean. And that's just a part of the advocacy in helping to destigmatize mental illness. You
yes,
know, we have to understand that it is something that is real. And you talk about some other famous people, if you will, but not too long ago, Delonte West, he used to play for the Cavaliers. He's a former
yes,
NBA player. And there were pictures of him floating around, Twitter and whatnot, and questioning whether he was homeless or
yes,
on drugs. But during the time he played in the NBA, he was diagnosed. And it's my understanding that he never acknowledged or accepted his diagnosis. So if these are pictures of him out on the street and things like that, he could be untreated. But what I appreciated about the story is that his cousin spoke up. His
okay,
cousin spoke up, and as a family member with a loved one living with severe mental illness, I connected with that cousin because he's like, hey, we are trying to help him. There's only so much that we can do, which is true because the person has rights. But he may have always had different symptoms that he's shown over time. But as an adult, if he doesn't want the treatment, unfortunately, no one can make him have it until such time, unfortunately, if he does harm to himself or to someone else. And there is it seems to be a very heightened standard that you have to meet as to doing harm to oneself, because everything that we think might be harm is not considered harm.
Yeah.
That can be a very, very unfortunate thing, because while it may not be a physical harm, it is certainly a health risk in regards to sanitary conditions and things that you are consuming that are not food.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about Driven. I am definitely going to be getting that book.
Well, thank you very much. Hashtag Driven is my debut book, and I use it as a resource for families and friends that have a loved one living with severe mental illness. I share my journey through my life. I consider it a motivational memoir, but it is a resource for families and friends. It goes through just the real life situations that we have faced with my mother. Unfortunately, some individuals who are severely mentally ill engage in drug activity and things of that nature. They're taken advantage of, as I indicated. Sometimes they have a payee. Well, sometimes if they're in control of their own money, people, will offer to take them to the store or offer to do things for them, but basically price gouging. They're being the Uber, charging 3 times as Uber, that type of thing. Or
Yeah.
here, buy my groceries too, with their Snap card or whatever the case may be. So we really have to be there to help our loved ones in these types of situations, because while there's all this stigma and negative connotations associated with being mentally ill, they're more likely to be taken advantage of and abused physically and mentally than for them to cause any type of physical harm to someone else. But in hashtag Driven, the forward is by Les Brown, and I just share the journey primarily through my life, but focusing on trying to help other people realize the importance of mental health advocacy. And I call it now a triple A approach: acknowledging, accepting, and advocating. Acknowledging that mental illness is real, that
Yeah.
it is not going anywhere, that it does not discriminate race, religion, gender, nationality, financial status. It does not matter. Anyone can be subject to experiencing symptoms of mental illness. Secondly, accepting your loved one with these symptoms. Your loved one may never be that person that they were before they started showing signs of mental illness, and that's okay. You can establish a relationship with your loved one with those symptoms, and understanding what your boundaries are with that person so that you can continue to love them through that mental illness. And
Yeah.
then advocacy, like what you're doing on this show, having this very important information distribute to the masses so that the resources are known, that are available in the community. And then before we end, I would love to share some phone numbers with your audience so that they know places that they can call, and also other resources they can rely on.
Okay. That'll be amazing for them to even,
Yeah.
it's so hard. It's just so difficult that we are in times like this. But however, it's a blessing that we have these form of platforms that we are given these free information
Mm-hmm,
for
mm-hmm.
anyone, because sometimes people may have to pay for it, but like when it's free information, it's like you need to engage as much as possible, gain more information from these people, because it's you never know when you're going to ever hear it again, because we find ourselves in another world sometimes, and we're not really focusing on things like this.
Right. And it's important to understand. I mean, just looking at statistics, 1 in 5 will experience a mental health issue. 1 in 25 will experience severe mental illness. And that could just happen to anybody. You don't have to be predisposed because your relative has it or because of where you live or anything like that. It could just happen.
Right.
And while there's like 41 to 43% of adults in this country that seek treatment for their mental health issues, in the African American community, we're only like at 30% that will actually go and seek treatment. We got to do better than that for ourselves, for the generations to come,
Yeah.
because we need to do what's best to help us to move forward in our lives. The stressors are going to be there, and we don't need anything adding to it to make matters worse, if you will. So
Yeah.
I'm encouraging people to find out about organizations like NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And as I said, you can text NAMI, NAMI, to 741-741. And also what you'll find in hashtag driven is that you could call NAMI at 1-800-950-6264, or you can visit the website at nami.org for more information. And
That's wonderful.
also, with this COVID situation and a lot of the heightened stressors that we're all facing, everyone is not safe at home. And so I would also like to just share the information for the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is 1-800-799-7233. And
Mhm.
also the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is 1-800-273-8255. We cannot pretend that everything is okay. We
No.
cannot pretend that we can handle everything. And we cannot pretend that we don't need help at times. So
Yeah.
it's important for individuals to understand that there are resources available. We don't have to continue to struggle with these psychological distress that life just has in general. Some of us are facing socioeconomic disparities that we may have never experienced before, or may have experienced all of our lives, and now it's even worse, and you don't see a way out. There are food pantries that are available. There are different resources to help you pay your bills, help you pay your rent. Please
Yes.
look into those resources. They're readily available on social media. If you don't know, contact your church, who is more than likely to able to connect you to the resources that you need. And
Yeah.
for those who have a loved one living with severe mental illness, I also offer 5 essential keys to loving a loved one with severe mental illness. And your audience members can go to my website, CoreyEmpowers.com, and the 5 essential keys can be sent to them.
Yes. And I definitely put this on the screen so everyone will know.
Yeah, thank you.
Will definitely know how to contact you and know how to, purchase your book, follow you on Instagram, just many ways. And I really, really applaud you and appreciate you for sharing so much information. And I think it's so important that you are informative of it to a point you have experienced it as far as your mother. And I think that is very important for someone to be an advocacy of mental health when they dealt with someone with mental health. It makes it more passionate and more caring to a point a mental health individual or families will be able to trust you with their family member or trust you as for themselves to be able to communicate with you on problems and issues that they are battling every day on a daily basis. And I really I'm so happy you went to law school.
Well, thank you.
Because it's just amazing, and I just want you to keep empowering our communities and everyone all over the world so that they know like this is really important. And guys, please take advantage of all this information. You can play it back on
Yeah.
YouTube and on Facebook. Share it, everything, because this girl's the bomb.
Well, thank you very, very much. And you are the bomb. I really appreciate you using your platform to help uplift others in the community. And many times we just feel overwhelmed because we don't know that there is help available, or we feel ashamed about reaching out for help. Don't be ashamed, because you do not have to do it alone. You are not alone. And there are people who are more than willing and ready to help you because they're experiencing them themselves. Even with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, I mentioned this organization because, as you said, experience for personal experience. I have lived experience with this. I participated in NAMI's family to family support group. It's a 12-week course that takes you all through the information about disabilities and brain disease and how it impacts the families and friends of individuals who have severe mental illness. So I'm speaking this from the benefits that it provided to me, and I learned about that from my aunt. She saw it in the newspaper and told me about it, and I immediately went. They also have peer-to-peer support groups. And now, with the coronavirus and no contact and stay at home orders, people are able to connect on Zoom for these services. They're still available. So while they were in person before, they're now available online, so that the services are still available, because it is critical for individuals to be able to still engage in those types of programs, and they are still readily available. And as mentioned earlier in your program, to do those mental health assessments with Mental Health America, and that's available online as well, in the event you're not able to get to your healthcare provider right now.
Yes, I actually, before we go, I did a self-assessment. I took a leadership course with Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, I said congratulations to you. I saw that on LinkedIn. Yes.
And we did this assessment. It's called Spine.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask you different questions about yourself. And it's like you really just typing out a story, and you get to see how the lining goes with your spine.
Wow.
And wow, I'm like, I've been through some ups and downs.
Yes, yes.
It's a really cool assessment, and like even like just going through that course and doing it, it helped me grow mentally on so many avenues, so many aspects, to a point me wanting more and me gaining more information to be able to share it to individuals on this platform. So I'm
Yes.
like, let me make sure I balance it in so many ways, because people need to know. And just with women sharing their testimonies, a lot of people just think that we never been through nothing. And I'm sure you, as an attorney, no one would think that you've done been to so many schools or
Right.
that nature. And it's like, well, wait a minute, let's humble ourselves and back down. This is what I've been through, and I know,
Yes.
so it's just so important for us to just continue to break down those barriers, break cycles, build each other up, gain information. It's just important. We just got to
Yes.
continue to do it in our communities, and not just African American culture, all cultures, because
Absolutely.
we all battle many things.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, turning your pain into power.
Yeah.
A lot of people are very impressed with me becoming an attorney. Just having this odds against me, if you will. But I feel that, like, your pain to power is turning your problems into power, because no matter what level of success that you reach, if it's a attorney, celebrity, whatever it is, it's not like those problems or the pain is going to go away. You
No.
got to learn how to convert that, transform your mindset to know that you can use that to elevate you, to give you the energy, to give you the strength, to give you the power that you need to elevate yourself, to elevate your loved ones, and to elevate your community. So you're turning the problems, the pain, into power, so that you are becoming this position of being powerful. But what are you going to do with your position of power? Whatever it is, whatever your title is, whatever it is that you are doing, what are you going to do with that? I am encouraging you to use it to empower others. You're using your platform right now to empower others. I hope that the information we shared today, for those who are family members or friends with a loved one living with mental illness, that it is empowering to you to know about the resources that are available in the community. So we can use our pain, use our problems, and turn it into power, ultimately to empower others.
Yes. And we have an individual, his name is Kevin, and he said he deal with it himself, and he sees a therapist at least twice a month.
That
And,
is awesome.
and that's powerful.
Absolutely. Just being able to speak it out without shame, you're helping someone else to understand and know that they could do it too. It's
Yeah.
helpful, especially for Black men. Black men, I have two sons, and just hearing the fear that they have just from the images and the things that they see on social media and TV, real life, people being killed, Black men being killed. just for their very existence, they have a fear. And
Yes.
that is unfortunate to live that way, to have this transferred trauma, if you will. It's
Yes.
unfortunate. And it is important that they know and understand that it is okay to seek
Mhm.
counseling for that, to learn how to navigate through those problems or through those issues or those concerns so that you can have the highest quality of life possible.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And I will keep in contact with you just because I always have different things going on with my platform. And I love to get like a group of women together and we just empower everyone.
All right. I look forward to staying in touch with you, and congratulations again on your
Thank you.
certification. And I know I'm going to hear about great things and more to come from you. So I look forward to it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Corey.
You are very welcome. Have a great evening. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.